Jake Morrison sat quietly in his chair at the big round table. The Galactic Council meeting room was full of strange sounds. Alien voices clicked, hummed, and buzzed as they talked about trade deals and border disputes. Jake looked tired. His dark hair was getting gray at the sides, and his blue eyes showed the weight of months of failed talks. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Campbell packed her papers into a small bag. She moved carefully, like someone who had made up her mind about something important. Her red hair was pulled back tight, and her green eyes stayed focused on her work. She did not look at the aliens around the table. Jake stood up slowly. The chair made a soft scraping sound on the metal floor. A few aliens glanced his way, but most kept talking. The human section of the Great Council chamber was small, just 4 chairs in a space that held hundreds of beings from across the galaxy. "We are leaving," Jake said in a quiet voice. His words were simple, but they carried weight. Chairman Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire looked up from his crystal tablet. His body was made of living crystal that changed colors when he was annoyed. Right now it was flashing red and orange. "Ambassador Morrison, we are in the middle of important business. Sit down." Jake shook his head. "No, we are done here." Lisa stood up too. Behind them, the 2 other humans in their group gathered their few belongings. Captain Roy Henderson, a big man with rough hands from years of shipwork, picked up a small case. Dr. Susan Wright, a thin woman with sharp eyes, closed her computer and put it in her bag. "Done with what?" asked Counselor Thisara. Her voice was like music, but there was confusion in it. The Meridian Collective had always been friendlier to humans than most other species. "Done asking for help that will never come," Lisa said. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the anger underneath. "Done being treated like children who do not understand the real world." Chairman Vexitar's crystal body flashed brighter. "You humans always think everything is about fighting. The galaxy is more complex than your simple minds can understand." Jake looked at him for a long moment. "Maybe we are simple. Maybe we do not understand your complex politics and your careful balance of power. But we understand that the Void Swarm is real, and it is coming, and it will not care about your politics when it gets here. The Void Swarm is a minor threat at best," said Admiral Raxion from the Turthan Navy. His voice was deep and full of confidence. "A few dozen ships, maybe 100. Our fleets can handle them easily." 3,000 ships, Captain Henderson said quietly. "Our scouts counted them. 3,000 ships, and they are building more every day." The council chamber went quiet for a moment. Then several aliens started talking at once. They said, "The humans were lying. That human scouts were not trained well enough. That humans always made problems seem bigger than they were." Dr. Wright opened her computer again and put it on the table. A hologram appeared showing star charts and ship positions. "Here are our reports, all of them. Take a look." But none of the aliens looked at the hologram. They kept talking about human mistakes and human fears. Jake closed the computer. "We have been asking for 6 months for help to fight the swarm. You said we were being too aggressive. We asked for ships to help defend the outer colonies. You said we were being warlike. We asked for permission to build better weapons. You said we were being violent." "Because you are violent," Vextar said. His crystal body was now bright red. "Humans always want to fight first and think later. That is why you are not ready to be full members of this council." Lisa laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Not ready? We have been part of this galaxy for 50 years. We have followed your rules, paid your taxes, helped with your projects. We have saved your people from pirates and disasters. We have shared our technology and our knowledge. But we are still not ready? You need to learn patience," said Dr. Zeshki from Altair. His voice was kind, but his words stung. "Violence is not always the answer. Wisdom comes with age." Jake picked up his bag. "How old does a species have to be before their warnings matter? How many of our colonies have to be destroyed before you believe us?" The aliens did not answer. They looked uncomfortable, but they did not change their minds. The 4 humans walked toward the big doors of the council chamber. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. Jake stopped at the door and turned back. "We came here as friends," he said. "We wanted to be partners. We thought we could learn from you and maybe you could learn from us. But partners listen to each other. Partners help each other when there is trouble." He looked around the chamber, at all the different alien faces. Some looked away, others stared back with anger or annoyance. "When the Void Swarm comes for you, remember that we offered to stand with you. Remember that we tried to warn you. Remember that we wanted to fight, together." Chairman Vextar waved one of his crystal arms. "Go back to your little corner of space, humans, play your war games. When you are ready to act like civilized beings, the Council will consider letting you return." Jake nodded slowly. "We will remember that too." The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. The council chamber was quiet for a moment. Then the aliens started talking again about trade deals and border disputes. Outside in the hallway, the four humans walked toward the transport bay. They passed other humans who worked in the station. Jake stopped to talk to each one. "Pack up," he told them. "We are going home." "What about the trade agreements?" asked Maria Santos, who ran the human shipping office. "Cancelled," Lisa said. "What about the research projects?" asked Dr. Kevin Adams, who worked in the science labs. "Take everything with you," Jake said. "All files, all data, all equipment that we brought here." "But some of these projects have been going on for years," Dr. Adams said. "The aliens are counting on us to finish them." Susan Wright looked at him with cold eyes. "Were they counting on us when we asked for help with the Void Swarm?" Within hours, the word spread through human space. Every human colony, every human ship, every human station got the same message. It was short and simple. "Come home, now." Captain Henderson sent the message to his crew on the cargo ship New Dawn. They were loading supplies for the Centauri Trade Hub, a job they had been doing for 10 years. The alien workers they had been working with for all that time watched in confusion as the humans stopped their work and started packing. "Where are you going?" asked Zixtal, the station manager. He had been working with humans for so long that he spoke their language perfectly. "Home," Henderson said. "But what about the supply run to Kepler Station? They are waiting for these medical supplies." Henderson looked at the alien who had been his friend and business partner for a decade. "Find someone else to deliver them." "But there is no one else. The other shipping companies do not have the right permits for that route. It is too dangerous for most species." Henderson nodded. "I know. At the research station on Kepler, Dr. Wright deleted files and locked down laboratories. Her research on void swarm biology was the most advanced in the galaxy. She had been sharing her findings with alien scientists for years, hoping to build a defense against the growing threat. Dr. Zeschke found her in her lab, packing the last of her equipment. "Susan, what are you doing? We need your research." "You need my research, but you do not need my warnings," she said without looking up. "The Council makes political decisions. Science is different. We are colleagues, friends." Susan finally looked at him. "If we were friends, you would have supported us in the Council meeting. You would have told them that our data was correct." "I could not go against the Council's decision. You know that. And I cannot stay where my work is not valued." She sealed the last container and picked it up. "Good luck with the Void Swarm, Zeschke. You are going to need it." All across the galaxy, the same scene played out hundreds of times. Humans packed up and left. They did not make speeches or threats. They did not try to punish the aliens who had rejected them. They just left. The great human exodus took only 2 weeks. 50 years of human presence in galactic civilization was packed up and taken away. Empty offices, silent laboratories, and abandoned trade routes were all that remained. When it was over, human space went dark. No messages came out, no ships went in. The humans had returned to their little corner of the galaxy, and they were not talking to anyone. 3 months passed since the humans left. At first, nobody in the Galactic Council thought much about it. Chairman Vexitar had said good riddance to the violent humans, and most aliens agreed. They thought the galaxy would run better without human interference. But things started to go wrong. Councillor Thisara stood in front of the emergency council meeting. Her usually calm voice shook as she read from her reports. The beautiful singing quality of her voice was gone, replaced by worry and fear. Trade between our worlds is down by almost half, she said. Ships are not arriving on time, some are not arriving at all. The council chamber buzzed with confused voices. How could this be happening? The galaxy had been trading for thousands of years before humans even learned to fly between stars. Admiral Raxion shifted in his seat. His confident voice from 3 months ago was quieter now. Our supply ships are having trouble with the dangerous shipping routes. The crew say the routes are too risky. Thaisara nodded. The humans used to take those routes. They said the danger was acceptable if you were careful and prepared. Chairman Vextar's crystal body flashed annoyed colors. Surely other species can learn to fly those routes. Humans are not special. But they were learning that humans might have been more special than anyone thought. Captain Bill Martinez had run supply missions to the Rim colonies for 15 years. He was one of thousands of human captains who took the jobs that other species found too dangerous or too boring. The routes through asteroid fields, the long hauls to distant mining stations, the emergency supply runs during storms or disasters. Now those jobs were not getting done. The Altarian merchant Captain Velnax tried to take one of the routes that Captain Martinez used to fly. It was a simple supply run to a mining colony, but it went through a field of unstable asteroids. Human pilots had been making that run for decades without major problems. Velnax's ship was damaged by asteroids on the first day. He had to turn back, leaving the mining colony without the food and medicine they needed. When he reported to his company, he was angry and confused. How did the humans make this look so easy, he asked. The route is impossible. His company manager looked at the old flight records. Captain Martinez had filed detailed reports every time he made the run. He wrote about asteroid patterns, gravity shifts, and safe windows for passage. He had mapped every danger and every safe path. But Velnax had not read those reports. His species thought human caution was just fear. They had ignored the detailed flight plans and tried to fly the route using their own methods. The mining colony went without supplies for 2 weeks before another captain could be found. By then, 3 miners had died from lack of medicine. Similar problems happened all across the galaxy. Space stations that had been maintained by human engineering teams started breaking down. The humans had worked in dangerous areas that other species avoided. They fixed problems in radioactive zones, in extreme temperatures, in places where the gravity was wrong or the air was poison. Dr. Angela Rivers had been the chief engineer at Central Station, the galaxy's biggest trade hub. She had worked there for 20 years, keeping the massive station running. When she left, the aliens thought they could easily replace her. They were wrong. Central Station was old, built by a dozen different species over hundreds of years. Each species had used different technology, different materials, different ideas about how things should work. Dr. Rivers had learned all of it. She knew which systems worked together and which ones fought each other. She knew how to fix problems before they became disasters. 2 weeks after she left, the station's main power grid failed. The backup systems tried to take over, but they were not compatible with the old Zephyrian crystal technology. The station went dark for 6 hours. The alien engineers who tried to fix it made the problem worse. They did not understand how Dr. Rivers had modified the systems to make them work together. Her detailed maintenance logs were written in human technical language that other species found hard to understand. When the power came back on, it was unstable. Lights flickered, computers crashed, and life support systems worked only part of the time. Trade ships started avoiding Central Station because it was too dangerous to dock there. The economic damage spread like a disease through the galaxy. Ships that could not dock at Central Station had to find other routes, but those routes were longer and more expensive. The cost of moving goods between worlds doubled, then tripled. Food became expensive on worlds that imported most of their supplies. Energy costs went up when power stations could not get the materials they needed. Medical supplies ran short when the complex distribution networks failed. Dr. Patricia Moore had been working on those distribution networks for years. She was a logistics expert, someone who figured out how to move millions of tons of supplies between thousands of worlds. It looked like simple math to most aliens, but it was much more complicated than that. Every world had different needs, different seasons, different problems. Some worlds needed food during their winter months. Others needed building materials after storm seasons. Some worlds produced more than they needed and could export, but only at certain times of the year. Dr. Moore had built computer models that tracked all of this. She knew which world would need what and when, and how to get it there. She coordinated with thousands of ship captains, station managers, and local officials. When she left, the aliens tried to use her computer models. But the models were built around human shipping networks and human communication systems. Without the human crews to carry out the plans, the models became useless. Worlds that had never worried about food shortages suddenly faced empty stores. Factory worlds could not get raw materials. Agricultural worlds could not sell their crops. The Meridian Collective's homeworld was one of the worst hit. They had specialized in art and philosophy for centuries, importing most of their food and manufactured goods. Dr. Moore had made sure they always had what they needed. Now their supply ships were weeks late. When ships did arrive, they brought the wrong things. Instead of the grain they needed for their population, they got luxury items that nobody wanted. Instead of medical equipment for their hospitals, they got raw metal ore that they had no way to process. Riots started in the Meridian cities when people could not find food in the stores. The peaceful philosophers who had looked down on human violence found themselves facing angry crowds in their own streets. But the worst was yet to come. Admiral Chen Wang had been warning the Galactic Council about the Void Swarm for 2 years. His intelligence network had been tracking the alien invasion fleet as it moved through empty space toward the galaxy's edge. The Council had ignored his warnings, calling them human paranoia and warmongering. They said the Void Swarm was just a small group of raiders who could be dealt with by local defense forces. Wang's spy network had been built over decades. Human agents worked in dangerous places, gathering information that other species could not or would not collect. They worked alone, far from help, using their own resources and taking huge risks. When the humans left, that spy network went with them. The first sign of real trouble came from the Rim colonies. 3 mining stations went silent in the same week. At first, the aliens thought it was just communication problems. Equipment failed sometimes, especially in the dangerous regions near the galaxy's edge. But when patrol ships went to investigate, they found empty space where the stations used to be. No debris, no distress signals, no survivors. The stations had simply vanished. Admiral Raxion commanded the patrol fleet that found the empty space. He stared at his scanner displays in confusion. In all his years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. "Where did they go?" asked his second in command. Raxion had no answer. Stations did not just disappear. Even if they were destroyed, there should be wreckage, bodies, some sign of what happened. The reports from his scouts were all the same. Empty space, no traces, no clues. It was as if the stations had been erased from existence. More colonies went silent over the following weeks. The pattern spread inward from the galaxy's edge, but slowly, carefully, like something was testing the defenses. Dr. Rebecca Adams could have told them what was happening. She had been studying Void Swarm tactics for years. She knew they consumed their targets completely, breaking down matter at the molecular level and using it to build more ships and weapons. But Dr. Adams was gone, back in human space with all her research. The aliens had copies of her public reports, but those were just summaries. The real knowledge, the detailed analysis of how the swarm operated, had left with her. The Galactic Council called emergency meetings to discuss the disappearing colonies, but without human intelligence networks, they were blind. They did not know how many swarm ships there were, where they came from, or where they would strike next. Chairman Vextar's crystal body stayed dark during these meetings. The confident leader who had dismissed human warnings 3 months ago now looked small and worried. "Perhaps," said Counselor Thisara carefully, "we should consider contacting the humans. They seem to have had better information about this threat." Vextar's body flashed angry red. "We will not go crawling back to those primitives. The galaxy survived for millions of years without humans. We can handle this problem ourselves. 6 months had passed since the humans left and the galaxy was burning. The Void Swarm had consumed 12 star systems. Entire worlds were gone, turned into empty space and floating dust. The beautiful crystal cities of the Zephyrians, the floating gardens of the Altarians, the ancient libraries of the Meridians, all of them had vanished without a trace. Fleet Commander Raxion stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his forces retreat from another failed battle. His proud Turthan navy, which had never lost a major engagement in 300 years, was being destroyed piece by piece. The enemy's ships were like nothing he had ever seen. They moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. When his forces tried to outflank them, they responded instantly. When his ships tried to retreat, the enemy knew exactly where they would go. "Commander," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving surrender offers from the enemy." Raxion laughed bitterly. "The Void Swarm does not take prisoners. They consume everything." He thought about Admiral Chen Wang, the human who had tried to warn them about swarm tactics. Wang had explained that the enemy was not just an invasion force. It was a living weapon that grew stronger with every victory. Each world they consumed gave them more resources to build more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. The aliens had not listened then. Now Raxion wished desperately that he could ask Wang for advice, but the humans were gone, sealed away in their own space, and they were not answering any calls. The economic collapse that had started with missing supply ships was now complete. Worlds that had imported food for centuries were starving. Manufacturing centers could not get raw materials. Medical facilities ran out of basic supplies. On the Meridian homeworld, Counselor Thisara walked through streets that had once been filled with art and music. Now they were empty except for long lines of hungry people waiting for food rations. The beautiful crystal fountains had been turned off to save energy. The floating sculptures had fallen to the ground because nobody knew how to maintain the anti-gravity systems. Dr. Maria Santos had been the human coordinator for the Meridian Food Distribution Network. She had made sure that grain shipments arrived on schedule, that storage facilities were properly maintained, that emergency supplies were ready for disasters. Without her, the system had collapsed in weeks. Ships arrived with the wrong cargo, or did not arrive at all. Food rotted in warehouses because nobody knew how to preserve it properly. Distribution centers broke down because the maintenance crews did not understand the human-designed equipment. Thisara had once thought that logistics was simple work that any intelligent being could do. Now she understood that Dr. Santos had been managing thousands of complex variables, making decisions every day that kept millions of people fed. The counselor tried to contact other worlds for help, but they all had the same problems. The careful balance of trade and resources that had kept the galaxy stable for centuries was gone. Chairman Vexitar faced a vote of no confidence in the Galactic Council. More than half the member species wanted him removed from power. They blamed him for the crisis, for dismissing the human warnings, for driving away the species that had been holding galactic civilization together. "How could we have known?" Vexitar demanded during the emergency session. His crystal body flashed desperate colors. "The humans never told us how important they were. They acted like servants, taking orders and doing simple work." "Maybe that was the point," said Dr. Zeshki from his seat in the Altarian section. "Maybe they were not servants. Maybe they were partners and we treated them like servants." The old scientist looked tired and sad. He had worked with human researchers for decades, but he had never understood what they were really doing. Dr. Susan Wright had shared her research freely, but she had also been building something larger, a network of knowledge and cooperation that spanned the galaxy. When the humans left, that network had died. Dr. Wright's research on void swarm biology was the most advanced in the galaxy, but the copies left behind were incomplete. She had shared her findings, but not her methods. She had published her conclusions, but not the detailed work that led to those conclusions. The alien scientists who tried to continue her research found gaps they could not fill. Her notes referenced experiments they had never seen, data they did not have access to, techniques they did not understand. She was not just doing research, Zeshki explained to his fellow scientists. She was teaching us, slowly, carefully, trying to help us understand. But we thought we already knew everything we needed to know. The worst part was that the humans had tried to warn them about more than just the Void Swarm. Ambassador Jake Morrison's final speech to the council had been recorded and stored in the archives. Now, as the crisis deepened, more and more aliens listened to that recording. "When the darkness comes for you," Morrison had said, "remember that we offered to stand with you." The darkness had come, and the galaxy was learning what it meant to stand alone. The Altarian homeworld was next in the Void Swarm's path. The ancient world had been the center of galactic philosophy for thousands of years. Its universities trained the brightest minds from dozens of species. Its libraries contained the accumulated wisdom of countless civilizations. None of that mattered to the Void Swarm. The attack began at dawn, local time. Thousands of enemy ships dropped out of hyperspace and surrounded the planet. The Altarian Defense Fleet, what was left of it after months of defeats, moved to intercept. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the defense fleet was gone and the swarm ships began their descent to the planet's surface. Dr. Zeshki stood in his laboratory, watching the enemy ships land through his window. He had spent his life studying the nature of intelligence and consciousness. Now he was about to become part of a collective mind that consumed everything in its path. He thought about Dr. Susan Wright, about all the human researchers who had worked alongside alien scientists for decades. They had been trying to build something together, a galactic community where different species could learn from each other and grow stronger. But the aliens had seen cooperation as submission, partnership as weakness. They had valued human work while dismissing human wisdom. The laboratory door exploded inward. Void Swarm soldiers poured in, their black armor gleaming with organic technology. Zeshki did not run or hide. He stood straight and faced them with dignity. "Tell me," he said to the lead soldier, though he knew it could not understand him. "Do you consume knowledge as well as matter? Will my thoughts live on in your collective, or will they simply disappear?" The soldier did not answer. It raised its weapon and fired. On Earth, President Michelle Davis received reports of the Altarian homeworld's fall. She stood in the Situation Room of the Global Defense Command, surrounded by military officers and civilian advisors. The walls were covered with displays showing the Void Swarm's advance through the galaxy. "They are moving faster now," reported General Frank Collins. "Each victory gives them more resources, more ships. At this rate, they will consume the entire galaxy within 2 years." Davis nodded grimly. She had been Jake Morrison's deputy during the failed negotiations with the Galactic Council. She had watched the aliens dismiss human warnings, had seen the contempt in their eyes when humans tried to offer help. "Any word from the Council?" she asked. "Several attempts at contact," Collins replied. "They want to negotiate. They are offering us full membership, equal voting rights, shared technology access. Everything they refused to give us 6 months ago." Davis looked at the tactical displays showing human space. While the galaxy burned, humanity had been busy. New ships filled the construction yards. New weapons were being tested. New alliances were being formed with species the Council had ignored. The scavenger races, the border colonies, the forgotten worlds that knew how to survive against impossible odds. "What do our people think?" Davis asked. "Mixed opinions," Collins admitted. "Some want to help immediately. Others think we should let the Council face the consequences of their choices. Most are somewhere in between." Admiral Kate Morgan entered the room, still wearing her spacesuit from a recent patrol mission. She had been Jake Morrison's military advisor during the Council negotiations. She had watched alien admirals dismiss human tactical doctrine as primitive warmongering. "The swarm has reached the core worlds," she reported. "Zephyrian Prime fell this morning. Vexitar's homeworld is gone." The room went quiet. Zephyrian Prime had been the unofficial capital of galactic civilization for millennia. Its crystal cities were among the oldest structures in the galaxy. Now, they were dust. "How long before they reach human space?" Davis asked. "At their current rate of expansion, 18 months, Morgan replied. but that assumes they maintain their current strategy. If they decide to focus on us specifically, much sooner. Davis studied the displays showing the swarm's movements. The enemy was not just consuming worlds randomly. There was a pattern, a strategy. They were targeting the most important systems first, the centers of power and knowledge. They are not just hungry, she realized. They are intelligent. They understand what they are destroying. General Collins nodded. Dr. Wright's research suggested that the swarm learns from each species it consumes. It gains their knowledge, their technology. The first attempt to contact humanity came 3 days after Zephyrian Prime fell. Chairman Vexitar, his crystal body dim with defeat, sent a formal message to Earth through the old diplomatic channels. The Galactic Council respectfully requests an audience with human leadership to discuss matters of mutual concern, the message said. It was polite, careful, and completely ignored. The automated response from human space was simple. Human territory is currently closed to outside visitors. Please contact local authorities in your own region for assistance. Vexitar stared at the message for a long time. Local authorities. As if the Galactic Council was just another regional government instead of the ruling body of galactic civilization. Send another message, he ordered his communications staff. Offer them full council membership, equal voting rights, shared technology access. The second message was also ignored. By the end of the week, 17 more star systems had fallen to the Void Swarm. The enemy was moving faster now, their ships multiplying with each victory. The pattern of their advance showed a terrifying intelligence. They were not just consuming worlds randomly, but targeting the most important systems first. Counselor Thisara tried a different approach. She sent personal messages to human scientists and engineers she had worked with over the years. Dr. Susan Wright, Dr. Kevin Adams, Captain Bill Henderson, dozens of humans who had been colleagues and, she thought, friends. None of them answered. On Kepler Station, the alien staff struggled to maintain basic operations. The station had been designed as a joint research facility, with humans handling the dangerous technical work, while aliens focused on theoretical research. Now the humans were gone, and the aliens were learning just how much they had depended on human expertise. Dr. Zeshki's replacement, a young Altarian named Veleth, tried to restart the Void Swarm research project. He had Dr. Wright's published papers and her basic laboratory notes. How hard could it be to continue her work? Very hard, as it turned out. Dr. Wright's research had involved working with live Void Swarm specimens in containment fields that required constant adjustment. The specimens were captured from destroyed ships and were still partially active, trying to consume anything they could reach. The first time Veleth tried to examine a specimen, it broke through the containment field in seconds. The creature, no bigger than his hand, began consuming the laboratory equipment and growing larger. It took the station's security team 3 hours and half their weapons to destroy it. Veleth realized that Dr. Wright had made handling these deadly creatures look easy. But she had been using techniques and safety protocols that she had never fully documented. Her casual notes about standard containment procedures referred to methods that only she and her human team had understood. The agricultural worlds were facing an even worse crisis. Human farmers had been growing food for the galaxy for 50 years, developing techniques for feeding billions of beings with very different nutritional needs. They had made it look simple, but it was anything but simple. Dr. Angela Rivers had been the agricultural coordinator for the Centauri system, managing food production for 12 different worlds. Each world had different soil, different weather, different growing seasons. Some species needed grain, others needed synthetic proteins, others needed living plants that had to be kept fresh during transport. Dr. Rivers had coordinated all of this with computer models that tracked thousands of variables. She knew which crops to plant, where, when to harvest them, how to store them, and how to transport them without spoilage. When she left, the aliens tried to use her computer systems to continue food production, but the systems were designed around human transportation networks and human storage facilities. Without the human crews to carry out the plans, the whole system collapsed. The Meridian Collective's agricultural minister, Thysavel, flew to Centauri, primed to see the disaster for himself. He found fields of rotting crops that nobody knew how to harvest properly, storage silos full of grain that was spoiling because the preservation systems needed constant human maintenance. How did one human woman coordinate all of this? He asked the local officials. They had no answer. Dr. Rivers had worked 16-hour days, managing supply chains across multiple star systems, troubleshooting problems in real time, adapting to weather disasters and equipment failures. She had made it look routine, but it had required skills and knowledge that took decades to develop. The transportation crisis was even worse. Human pilots had been flying the galaxy's most dangerous shipping routes for generations. They knew every asteroid field, every gravity anomaly, every solar storm pattern. They had developed techniques for navigating hazards that other species avoided entirely. Captain Roy Henderson had been flying the Epsilon route for 20 years. It was a supply run to mining colonies in the outer rim, through a region filled with unstable stars and shifting asteroid fields. The route saved weeks of travel time compared to the safe corridors, but it required expert navigation and constant vigilance. After Henderson left, the mining colonies went without supplies for a month. Finally, a Turthan captain named Raxivel volunteered to try the route. He was an experienced pilot with an excellent safety record. His ship was destroyed by a solar flare on the second day. The same type of flare that Henderson had been avoiding for 20 years by reading solar weather patterns and timing his jumps carefully. Raxivel had not known to watch for the signs. He had not known that the route required specific shielding, modifications that Henderson had developed through trial and error. He had not known about the safe harbors where ships could wait out dangerous conditions. The mining colonies finally had to be evacuated because no other pilot was willing to risk the Epsilon route. Similar disasters happened throughout the galaxy. Space stations broke down because human engineers were not there to maintain them. Trade routes became impassable because human pilots were not there to navigate them. Supply networks collapsed because human coordinators were not there to manage them. But the military situation was the worst of all. Admiral Raxion stood in the ruins of the Turthan Naval Academy, looking at holographic displays that showed the latest tactical simulations. His best strategists had been trying for months to develop effective tactics against the Void Swarm, and they were failing badly. The Swarm fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They used no formations that alien military doctrine could predict. They employed strategies that seemed to violate basic principles of warfare. They coordinated perfectly across vast distances, as if controlled by a single mind. Admiral Chen Wang had tried to explain swarm tactics to the Council months ago, but nobody had listened. His reports had described an enemy that fought without regard for individual survival, that treated each ship as an expendable part of a larger organism. Now Raxion desperately needed that knowledge, but Wang was gone. The human military advisors who might have helped develop countermeasures were all back in human space, and they were not sharing their expertise with the people who had called them primitive warmongers. The Academy's War College began incorporating human tactical doctrine into their curriculum, but it was too little too late. General Frank Collins had written extensively about logistics, about the importance of supply lines and redundant planning. Colonel Steve Baker had developed innovative approaches to defensive warfare that emphasized flexibility and adaptation. The alien generals tried to implement these human ideas, but they did not understand the underlying philosophy. Human military thinking was based on assuming the worst and preparing for it. Alien military thinking was based on elegant solutions and overwhelming technological superiority. The two approaches were fundamentally different, and it took years of training to think like a human soldier. The breaking point came when the Void Swarm reached the core worlds. The ancient Zephyrian homeworld, Chairman Vextar's own planet, fell in less than 3 days. Vextar watched the destruction from his evacuation ship, seeing billion-year-old crystal cities consumed by the relentless enemy. His people, the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy, had been reduced to refugees fleeing for their lives. The planet's defense grid, built with the finest Zephyrian technology, had been useless against the swarm. The enemy ships had adapted to every weapon, countered every strategy, overwhelmed every defense. How? Vexitar whispered to himself as his homeworld died. How did the humans know this would happen? His aide, one of the few survivors from the planet's government, looked at him with tired eyes. Maybe they did not know, Chairman. Maybe they just prepared for the worst possibility, while we prepared for the best. It was a painful truth. The humans had been planning for disasters that might never come, building defenses against threats that seemed unlikely, preparing for wars they hoped would never happen. The aliens had called this paranoia and militarism. Now they understood it was wisdom. As more refugee ships fled the dying world, reports came in from across the galaxy. The swarm was accelerating its advance, consuming multiple systems simultaneously. The careful balance of galactic civilization was collapsing completely. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was smaller than it had ever been. Half the member species had lost their homeworlds to the Void Swarm. Others were fighting for survival in their last remaining colonies. The great chamber that had once held hundreds of delegates now echoed with the voices of fewer than 50 survivors. Chairman Vexitar stood at the center of the room, his crystal body dim and cracked from stress. He had aged decades in the past year, watching his civilization crumble around him. The proud leader who had dismissed human warnings now faced the end of everything he had tried to protect. "Fellow beings," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "we gather here today to face a truth that we should have accepted long ago." The remaining delegates listened in silence. There was no more political maneuvering, no more species rivalry, no more ancient pride. There was only desperation and the growing certainty that they had made a terrible mistake. "The Void Swarm has consumed 60% of our worlds," Vexitar continued. "Our fleets are destroyed. Our economies have collapsed. Our people are dying, or fleeing to the few safe havens that remain." Counselor Thisara, speaking for the Meridian survivors, stood up slowly. "We all know why we are really here, Chairman. We need to ask the humans for help." The words hung in the air like a confession of failure. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had been the supreme authority in their region of space. Now, they were reduced to begging for assistance from the species they had called primitive. "I formally propose," Vexitar said, each word causing him pain, "that we request the return of humanity to the Galactic Council. We acknowledge our error in judgment and humbly ask for their assistance in our darkest hour." The vote was unanimous. There was no debate, no discussion, no alternative proposals. Every surviving delegate raised their hand, arm, tentacle, or wing in agreement. The message they sent to Earth was simple: "We were wrong, please help us." The response came not from Earth's government, but from Admiral Kate Morgan, commander of the Human Defense Fleet. Her image appeared on screens throughout the remaining Council worlds, transmitted on every frequency, in every language the galaxy used. "People of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice calm but firm. "We received your message. We also received your previous messages, all 47 of them, over the past 8 months. Morgan was a middle-aged woman with gray streaks in her brown hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years spent making difficult decisions. She wore the simple blue uniform of the Human Space Navy, with no decorations or symbols of rank except the small admiral's star on her collar. You ask for our help now that your worlds are burning and your people are dying. You offer us partnership now that you need our ships and our soldiers. You promise us equality now that you have no other choice." The alien delegates watching the broadcast shifted uncomfortably. Morgan's words were not angry or accusatory, but they cut deeper than any insult could have. "1 year ago we told you that the storm was coming. We offered to weather it together. You chose pride over partnership, ancient authority over present need. You called us violent primitives who did not understand the complexities of galactic politics." Morgan paused, letting her words sink in. Behind her, the camera showed glimpses of human ships and stations, all bearing signs of intense activity and preparation. "We understood the complexities perfectly. We understood that politics
matter less than survival when the enemy comes for you.
We understood that civilized debate means nothing when your children are dying. We understood that sometimes the only choice is to fight or be consumed." She leaned forward slightly, looking directly into the camera as if she could see each alien, delegate personally. But we also understand something else. We understand loyalty. We understand that when people ask for help, you give it if you can. We understand that abandoning others to suffer and die is not an option, even when those others have abandoned you first. The broadcast switched to show human fleets in action. Massive ships engaged Void Swarm forces at the galaxy's edge, not retreating but advancing, pushing the enemy back with tactics and weapons no other species had managed to deploy effectively. For the past year, while you struggled with the consequences of our departure, we have been preparing, not hiding, not cowering behind our borders, but getting ready to do what we always knew we would have to do eventually. The images showed human Marines boarding damaged alien vessels, rescuing survivors. Human medical ships treating wounded refugees. Human engineers repairing critical infrastructure on worlds the swarm had partially consumed. We have been fighting the Void Swarm for 8 months now, not because the Council asked us to, but because it was the right thing to do. We have been protecting refugee convoys, evacuating colonies, and pushing the enemy back one system at a time. Dr. Charlie Brooks, Humanities Director of Xenobiology, appeared in the next segment of the broadcast. He was a young man with an eager expression and hands that moved constantly as he spoke, excited by his subject despite its grim nature. We have developed new weapons based on Void Swarm biology, he explained, standing in front of displays showing complex molecular structures. We learned that they consume matter by breaking down molecular bonds, so we created weapons that disrupt their consumption process. The broadcast showed human ships firing strange blue beams that caused swarm vessels to collapse in on themselves, their own consumption mechanisms turning against them. But more importantly, Brooks continued, we learned something the swarm did not expect us to learn. They are not just a hive mind. They are a collective consciousness that grows stronger by absorbing the knowledge and experience of the species they consume. He smiled grimly. Which means they have been learning galactic military tactics, galactic technology, galactic ways of thinking. But they have not been learning human tactics because we left before they could study us. The implications were staggering. The swarm had been adapting to alien strategies because they had absorbed alien minds. But human approaches to warfare, logistics, and survival were still unknown to them. Admiral Morgan returned to the screen. The price of our assistance is not territory or resources or political power. The price is change. Real change. Not just words and promises. She gestured to a document that appeared beside her image. These are our terms for rejoining galactic civilization. We will not return as junior partners or helpful servants. We will return as equals with full authority to make the decisions that need to be made. The terms were revolutionary. The new Galactic Alliance would be based on merit rather than species age or technological advancement. Leadership positions would be filled by competence rather than tradition. Military command would go to those who could actually win battles, not those who had inherited ancient titles. Most importantly, Morgan continued, the Alliance will be founded on the principle that every species has value, not just the old and powerful ones. The scavenger races, the border colonies, the forgotten worlds that have been surviving on their own for centuries. They will have voices too. The broadcast showed human fleets working alongside ships from dozens of species that the old council had barely acknowledged. Asteroid miners, frontier traders, and refugee groups all flying in formation with the human defense fleet. We learned something during our year away from galactic politics, Morgan said. We learned that the galaxy is bigger than the Council. Chambers, that civilization is more than crystal cities and ancient libraries. The real strength of any civilization comes from the people who do the work, not the people who make the speeches. President Michelle Davis appeared in the final segment, speaking from the Global Defense Command Center on Earth. She was a tall woman with short black hair and calm brown eyes that missed nothing. To the surviving members of the Galactic Council, we offer partnership based on mutual respect and shared sacrifice. To the people of all species who are fighting for survival, we offer hope and assistance. To the Void Swarm, we offer nothing but destruction. The broadcast ended with images of human relief ships arriving at besieged worlds, of human engineers rebuilding destroyed infrastructure, of human soldiers fighting alongside alien defenders. Chairman Vexitar stared at the blank screen for a long time after the transmission ended. Around him, the other delegates sat in stunned silence. "Well?" asked Thisara finally. "Do we accept their terms?" Vexitar's crystal body flickered with colors that had no name in any alien language. "Do we have a choice?" The vote was unanimous again. The old Galactic Council dissolved itself and transferred all authority to the new Galactic Alliance. The species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia stepped aside for a new order based on human principles of competence, cooperation, and courage. The transformation was not easy. Ancient prejudices died hard, and many aliens struggled to accept human leadership. But as human fleets pushed back the Void Swarm and human expertise rebuilt damaged worlds, even the most reluctant species began to understand. The humans had not returned to serve the galaxy. They had returned to save it. And in saving it, they had changed it forever. Dr. Susan Wright returned to her laboratory on Kepler Station, but now she worked as part of a team that included the best minds from dozens of species.